So step one to make our apple cider whoopie pies is going to be to reduce our apple cider to be about a quarter of the volume that it was when we first started. We're going to do that by pouring our apple cider into a pot on the stove, and we're going to bring it to a simmer and let it simmer until it's 1/4 of the volume. That'll make it nice and concentrated so we get our apple cider flavor without adding too much liquid to our batter. So as our apple cider reduces on the stove, it's a good idea to take out some of our other ingredients so they can get to room temperature as we wait. We need our apple butter to be at room temperature, our regular butter to be at room temperature, and our eggs to be at room temperature so that when we mix our dough, it all gets mixed together evenly and with ease. Now we have our oven preheating to 350 and our apple cider reducing. We can start mixing our dry ingredients together. We're going to need 1 3/4 cup of flour. I usually use the scoop and level method to get the best, most accurate measurements. A lot of people weigh it. I don't weigh the flour personally. I don't feel the need to because my baked goods usually come out good without doing it, so why bother? Plus I don't have my kitchen scale with me. 1 cup, and this is our 3/4 cup. I have to stand on my tippy toes to do this. I'm only 4'11", so I just do what I have to. Okay, 1 3/4 cup of flour. Put that aside. And we're going to need 1 1/2 teaspoons of cinnamon. A 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. Two teaspoons of cornstarch. This helps keep it soft, and it's also a thickening agent. Now a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we need 1 teaspoon of baking powder. And a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. That's all the dry ingredients. We're just going to give it a whisk to mix it all together before we move on to our wet ingredients. We're gonna cream our butter and sugar together and add our eggs and our vanilla and our apple butter and our apple cider to that. To cream together our butter and sugar, we're gonna start with 6 tablespoons of room temperature butter. Add it to a large bowl. And to that, we're gonna add 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar. You can use light or dark. The darker the brown sugar, the higher the molasses content, so it gives a richer flavor. And brown sugar, you really pack it in to your cup. Pressing it down. See how it's tightly packed in there? 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar. And we need 1/2 cup of granulated white sugar. I'm going to cream this together until it's a little bit fluffy and well incorporated. Maybe about a minute. And scrape down the sides as needed. So you can see how my butter's starting to get creamy. As it mixes with the sugar, just keep mixing it until it's nice and creamy. You'll get there eventually. So this is what my butter sugar mixture looks like when it's creamed together. This is what it should look like. If you stir it, it clumps together and forms a nice fluffy, buttery, sugary paste. And to that buttery, sugary paste, we're going to add our eggs and our vanilla. We have 2 eggs here at room temperature. Most recipes tell you to do 1 egg at a time and beat well after each addition. Personally, I never do that, and I've done a lot of baking, so I can tell you with confidence that it's okay. You don't have to do that. You might want to if you're like a stickler for the rules or something, but now we need a teaspoon of vanilla. You can use any vanilla you have. I like to use vanilla bean paste because it gives a really good flavor. And we're gonna cream it together some more. Maybe about 30 seconds on medium speed. Looks like at this stage, and to this we're going to add our apple butter and our apple cider. I actually need to check on the apple cider. It's still on the stove. I ended up making more than what the recipe calls for because then I'll just stick it in the fridge, or if I don't use it in the next week or so, I'll put it in the freezer to use at a later date. So now we have 1/4 cup of concentrated reduced apple cider. Add that to our batter. And we're going to measure out 1/4 cup of apple butter, room temperature. And we're going to mix it. Now finally we can add our dry mixture to our wet mixture. We're going to do it in increments. I'm probably going to divide it up into 3 different increments and just slowly incorporate it because we don't want to overmix it because then our apple cider whoopie pie cookies might turn out too chewy or too dense. We don't want that. We want nice, light, fluffy, donut-like cookies. So instead of using the mixer, I'm just gonna mix it by hand with my spatula, my rubber spatula. Incorporate that flour mixture into there. You can see I'm just doing it very gently. I think of it as I'm just kind of moistening the flour and the dry ingredients with the wet ingredients. Rather than vigorously whisking it, I'm just incorporating it. Stirring, folding. Folding technique is always good for batters like this. It's like with pancake batter, you would actually do the opposite. You would take the dry ingredients and make a little hole in the middle and then fill the hole like with the liquid, like a little well. Just kind of thick like a pancake batter. Or a donut batter is probably closer resemblance since it's inspired by an apple cider donut. Okay, this is my batter, what it looks like now. I'm almost done. I'm just gonna stir it until the flour pockets are gone. 1, 2, 3, and we're done. Not over mixing it. To scoop out my apple cider whoopie pies, I'm gonna need a cookie scoop that holds about 1.5 tablespoons of batter in it. And I'm gonna line 2 trays with parchment paper. Place each mound of batter about 3 inches apart. You're gonna get about 9 of these per tray, and then you'll be able to make 18 whoopie pies with them. Now that my whoopie pies are trayed up, I'm gonna place them in the 350-degree oven for about 12 minutes, turning them halfway through. After 12 minutes in the oven, the apple cider whoopie pies are perfectly baked. I'm just placing them onto a cooling rack so they can cool for 5 minutes before I brush them each with melted butter and dip them into a cinnamon sugar mixture. Now that my cookies have cooled down for about 5 minutes, I'm going to brush each one with melted butter and dip it in my cinnamon sugar mixture. I have 3 tablespoons of melted butter here, and I have 1/4 cup of granulated sugar with a tablespoon of cinnamon. It's good to do this while the cookies are still a little warm so that the cinnamon sugar adheres better, and then we don't have to use as much butter to make it adhere. By the way, this is the same process as it would be for making an apple cider donut. The main difference is just in the shape. And they feel so soft and fluffy. The only other thing we still have to do is make our cream cheese filling for each of these whoopie pies. So I've got my ingredients getting to room temperature behind me here. I have 8 ounces of cream cheese, 3 ounces of butter. I've got my vanilla. I have 2 cups of powdered sugar. And I'm going to add caramel to it as well. We'll get to that next. I'll show you how to make that cream cheese filling for our whoopie pies. And you can't do that until these are completely cool, but they do cool pretty fast. Now to make the cream cheese filling, I'm going to add 8 ounces of room temperature cream cheese, 3 tablespoons of room temperature butter, 2 cups of powdered sugar, 2 to 3 tablespoons of caramel sauce, and a teaspoon of vanilla to a mixing bowl, and I'm just going to mix it until it looks smooth. I'll start by mixing all the wet stuff together to get a mix. So I'm adding 2.5 cups of powdered sugar to this, a little bit at a time so that I don't end up just spewing powdered sugar all over the room, which has happened to me countless times. Now that most of the powdered sugar is mixed in, I could use the hand beater again. So now that I myself and the majority of my counter space here is covered in cream cheese frosting, that means that I'm done. I'm ready to start dolloping this onto my whoopie pie cookies. We are assembling our whoopie pies now. I have my cream cheese frosting, and I have my totally cooled down whoopie pies, and I have my cookie scoop, the same size that I used to make my whoopie pies. I'm gonna put that same amount in between each whoopie pie. And just make a little sandwich. Our apple cider whoopie pies are best served immediately, but if you're a lunatic like me and make them at 9 o'clock at night, then don't worry, you can put them in a Tupperware container. Make sure it's airtight and stick them in your fridge for 3 days is probably your best bet, but I mean, you could probably push it another day or two, but they just won't taste as fresh. So I hope you enjoyed this apple cider whoopie pie tutorial. Enjoy. Happy baking, everybody. And let me know if you have a request for my next baking video. God bless.